Welcome to the Fret Dojo podcast, the place where pro guitar players share their secrets. Visit www.FretDojo.com to access online courses and free resources to take your guitar playing to the next level.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan with Fret Dojo. Very excited to be here with Pritesh Walia, who's here to join us. And so let me take a moment now and read his bio for you. Pritesh Walia is a virtuoso jazz guitarist, an accomplished composer, and an educator hailing from the vibrant city of New Delhi, India. His musical journey began at 13 when he immersed himself in the rich traditions of Indian classical music. Fueling his insatiable curiosity for music, Pritesh sought Western influences, initiating a lifelong pursuit of mastering diverse musical styles. Pritesh, you have an associate's degree from Musicians Institute, a bachelor's degree from Berklee College of Music, and a master's degree from NEC, New England Conservatory. That's awesome. Pritesh has conducted masterclasses and clinics across India, South America, and the United States, and is featured on guitar instructional platforms such as Lick Library, and he is currently an instructor at Bunker Hill Community College and Brookline Music School. And your current project is PSA, an organ trio, and we'll hear a little bit about that later in the show. So awesome.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show. So
Thank you.
we always like to start with, where your musical journey started. So can you talk a little bit about, was it, you started at 13, was it kind of a musical family you were in, or was that kind of
Not
your
at
own
all.
thing?
No, it was kind of my own thing, but I started kind of at 13, but I still think that's quite not of that young of an age that most of my friends started playing at. It's weird because when I actually started going to music schools and I went to like over 10 years of education, all my friends were like, yeah, I've been playing since I was 4. My dad had a guitar when I was 5, or we were listening to Clapton records when I was 6 years old. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I don't have anything like that. I was in the part of this small city called in New Delhi. None of my parents, either my mom or my dad, were music enthusiasts, but mostly like the Indian cinema and the film music. That was their vibe, and that was not my vibe at all. That was not something that I was told that I could find myself to find any interest in. So at 13 or so, I think as a part of school, we had these extracurricular classes, you might call, and one of the ones that I wanted to, well, I think we only had like 3 options. There was like music, art, and dance. I was not going to dance. That was not my thing. Art was cool, but I was already going through some art classes at that time. So I was like, music will be kind of a cool thing to try out. So kind of walked into that. But, when you're in India, it's going to be Indian classical music that I'm walking into, So that's also something that it wasn't really interesting to me. I never fully found myself to immerse into Indian classical music ever. And I think it's because I would hear it everywhere. It was just
right.
It's just so funny because there are 2 sides to all of this. Some people hear it everywhere and they're like, wow, I love it. I hear it everywhere. It's awesome. I want to be a part of it. And there are people like me who are like, I hear it everywhere. Kind of want to be away from it as much as I can. Try and find something that I haven't heard, But I walked into it hoping I'm going to learn a new instrument, and I was kind of more gravitating towards some form of percussions or drums or something like that. But I couldn't help myself see this broken acoustic guitar with like 4 strings, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I picked it up and I tried to play it, and I could not play anything. The funny part, I think probably the reason why I went towards that instrument was because of me being this, like, taking it as a challenge. I think at that age, everything is like a challenge. Like, I can do it better than everyone else, in like high school or whatever. 13, I don't know, even high school. It's like way before, and because I tried every other instrument, and it's easy to make sounds with all of them. If there's like a keyboard or a piano or something, keys, I can just like press a button and make a sound, or any
Mhm.
other instrument. I was able to we didn't have any woodwinds or brass, so we had only these instruments. Guitar was the only one where I couldn't make anything else except for play the open strings, and I was like, "What is this?" I was trying so hard to press on a fret, and it would buzz, and it would not make any notes, and I was like, "Why is this not making any sound?"
Mm.
So I think that I took that as a challenge, and then I was like, "Need to figure this out." And that's kind of where my journey kind of began with the instrument. But
Mm.
as time kind of grew, and I kind of my mom, I think, bought me an acoustic guitar, my first acoustic guitar, and I started taking some classes locally. But I think someone introduced me to, like, I think it was like ACDC or something like that, and I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Mm.
What is this? And I would just learn those riffs on guitar and then show up to my Indian classical classes, and they'd be like, what are you learning? And I'm like, but I really like this. And then they'd be like, just don't show up to class. So I remember for like 3 or 4 years, I was like told by my teacher to just don't show up because I was learning all this other stuff. And I would just take that time to practice all my rock
Man.
guitar stuff that I was checking out. So it's weird how I started, but I just slowly got more and more interested in it. And I think by the age 16 or so, I started seriously investing time into it. So in a nutshell, that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Could you talk about kind of bridging that gap from, being 16 and starting to take it really seriously to, attending Musicians Institute, on another part of the planet? That's incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because um being from India, not a lot of parents actually um encourage taking music as a professional, as like your profession. It's really hard for most parents to do that. It's our system in India is kind of is made or structured in a way where you kind of have either turn out to be a doctor or an engineer or do something in computer science or some world of that. There's not a lot of creative space. If there is, and if there are creative people, it's because their entire family or heritage has been creative since the starting. So it's like a thing that they pass on within generations, and that's why Indian classical music has been so pure to even till date. It's because it's been going on through generations. But that wasn't the case for me. So for me, I was just taking it seriously, playing a lot with my school band, and just found a couple of friends who could also like the music, and had a drummer, bass player, and stuff, and started our band and started playing. But at some point, my parents started realizing that, hey, it seems like this guy is like really into playing guitar seriously. He's spending hours in that, and believe me, my grades reflected that I wasn't paying attention in school at all. You know, so my parents, I think my parents were the one who kind of approached me, and they were like, I think once you're done with school, we should send you to a music school to study. And I was like, no, that's crazy. I'm probably gonna try and be some business school or something. Take the traditional route that
Mm.
every other that's set for us. And it was actually, I think, my dad who, in the end, was like, dude, come on, look at your grades and look at how hard you work on your music. I remember, I think, him like pointing out towards all like the small trophies that I won over the years, and being like, this, look at all these achievements. There's obviously something really going on, and you need to get on the next level for this. And if Western or classical or whatever style of music is your thing, then you got to go to the country that has that music. Let's get you there. And I was like, okay, let's maybe. So I made I think there was moment where we had a conversation, and I was like, let's make a trip to America and let's go and check out a music school as a side thing, but check out business schools and stuff that I will be applying to.
Mm.
That was going to be my main thing. But then I came to, I think, LA, checked out Musicians Institute, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. These guys play all the time. There's no, I don't think the school does that anymore, but it was a 24-hour. I think we also like showed up at, I mean, we checked out the school, but we also showed up on a off day where we weren't on a tour, just check out the school by ourselves with a pass
Mhm.
and something. And it was at a weird time, so we're like 6 or 7 p.m. where there's not much to show. Students are just in their rooms, but it was still really happening. People were there, teachers were still there, hanging out till like 10, sometimes even till midnight. People were jamming all night. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is cool. Is this what being in a music school is like? Sign me in. um so I think that's kind of where I was like, I want to go to this school. There were all these conversations of like, oh, we should go to try out for Berklee or try out these other schools. But I think when I went to Musicians Institute and I checked out the school and the way they do things, it's very hands on.
Mm.
It was like guitars lying everywhere, everyone's playing, and you have 24 hours of like just jamming going on all the time. And I was like, this is awesome. This is a place to be. I think I'll learn quite a bit from here and I'll have a lot of fun doing it. So I think I applied. I got a Steve Vai scholarship somehow. Um, and I remember though still applying for the school, and I was trying. That was the time I was like kind of getting close to understanding jazz a little bit and
Mm.
understanding modes and stuff on guitar. So I did like I made my own backing track with chords that I thought were these modal chords that I made up, and played my own improvised solo and stuff. And I think that's kind of what maybe impressed them at the moment. That was like, oh, this kid from India is like figuring things out by himself, and maybe that kind of led them to being like giving me that scholarship, which I'm very, very humbled for. It's been over 15, 13 years, 14 years since, but
Mm.
that was really an awesome thing to get that scholarship. And then yeah, I was at MI for 2 years getting my associates. And then I think I left LA to go to Berklee right after that. Yeah, that's where the journey to East Coast started. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So, you talk about AC/DC being your first kind of guitar
Yeah.
introduction. Do you have a particular recording or song that you remember being your first like jazz guitar kind of
Well, I think
realization?
for jazz guitar, I mean, I know for AC/DC, I think it was what's that song? I think it's Thunderstruck or something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That kind of, I was just like, wow, what is this? Guitars can
Mhm.
do this, I was like, this is crazy. I couldn't imagine guitars making that kind of sound, especially the one that I had in my hand at like 14 that had 4 strings on it. I was like, how
Right.
is this guy making this sound from this instrument? But for jazz, I think my initial um when I started getting into jazz, I couldn't really get into like straight ahead swing stuff at all. I feel like I have a theory that most people are intimidated by jazz, um, and they listen to jazz music and they can't understand it, and then it's very easy for them to kind of dismiss it. You know, um, it's very easy to dismiss things in general and just like let it slide off the table. Then be like, why do I not like this? What about it is what I don't like? And this is something that I later kind of understood. It was just when I first introduced to jazz, I think it was like recording of Coltrane that I checked out, and I think it was him playing on impressions, and I was like, what is going on? This is not making sense. What is drums playing? What is this huge cello looking thing? I
Mm.
was like, an upright bass, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And the piano's playing all these like out chords. What's the key? I couldn't find it on my guitar. I was like, I was getting angry. I was like, what is this? It wasn't making sense. And I think that turned me off from that style of music. And it's funny now, 12, 15 years later, where I've transcribed so much of that stuff. And now I'm like, this is like my thing. But initially it wasn't. And I think that's the case for most people. No one really kind of opens a recording of Coltrane playing something like this and just like goes like, yeah, this is my jam. It doesn't instantly happen. It's an
Yeah,
acquired taste.
it's kind of jumping in the deep end.
Yeah, it is jumping in the deep end, and that's the thing. You can either start with not jumping in the deep end and start with something kind of more simplistic. You can try Dave Brubeck stuff, which is a little bit more digestible, but even though he has some like very intense stuff also going on. But there is a lot more digestible jazz. A lot of Miles' older stuff also
Mm.
is very, Chad Baker stuff is also very, but that's not the thing that I got introduced to. But then started checking out jazz guitar players, and I think the one that really hit me strong was John Scofield, and I was like, wow, this guy is it, because he was bluesy, he was jazzy, he had it all. He had this sound that I feel like no other guitar player had, or even till date, I feel like you hear two notes and it's Scofield. It's kind
Right,
of
of course.
vibe with him. I think, and the reason I got attracted towards checking out, going crazy on Scofield records, is because I think I found elements of like funk, jazz, rock. He was deep in with anyone and everything in every genre that I could think of at that point. He had like these blues records plus these crazy straight ahead records. He had like almost anything and everything that I can think of was in there. He had these organ trio records. He had all of it. And he had like straight up, it kind of felt like R&B ish kind of tunes. And I was like, everything's going on with this guy. He's like
Mm.
he's in every space, and I love it. And every song or every genre that I found and I heard him in, I was like, wow, it still sounds like him. He doesn't change anything within himself. It's just still sounds so much of him. So I think that was my first. That led me to like other more of these fusion guitar players. I was like Robin Ford, checked
Oh
out a little bit
yeah.
of Benson, But yeah, I think Robin Ford, him, Mike Stern. So John Scofield, Mike Stern. There was Wayne Krantz a little bit. All these guys that I started checking out, and then I started slowly moving out of them because I think at Musicians Institute, I kind of had like an identity crisis at the end of when I graduated. I was like, man, it feels like I can really play the guitar. I can read music. I didn't know how to read music at all. And I kind of really went crazy on learning how and being better at that. But I was like, I'm just a guitar player, and you take that guitar out of my hands and I feel like I have no identity, and I started feeling like I'm only looking at music through a lens of a guitar player, and that's probably not something that I should be doing. There's a lot more outside of this. And at that point I applied to Berklee, and that's when I started getting introduced to like at Berklee I started like jazz composition, so I wrote a lot for big bands and stuff like that. And I seriously started getting into like more traditional side of playing jazz you know
Mm.
so I think that's when I started like writing music, composing for other people, my own stuff, my own jazz trio, playing for different bands and groups and stuff, and started understanding, hey, how do woodwinds work? How do I write for brass instruments? How do I write for other instruments? And my no knowledge on and what I was listening also expanded by a lot. I wasn't guitar centric anymore. I wasn't listening to guitar. As a matter of fact, I feel like I really stopped listening to a lot of guitar players for at least a good 7 to 8 years. I was only listening to saxophone players or piano players and stuff like that. I started teaching myself how to play piano and stuff. So, yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of people still ask me like, "Hey, your lines are like very saxophone, and your comping is very piano inspired." And I think, yeah, that was kind of the reason why that happened. I started finding all these different instruments and started transcribing them, and I was like, "This is cool." It makes absolute no sense on the guitar, but this is awesome.
Yeah, right.
So much fun to figure it out. Awesome. Yeah.
So Pritesh, you mentioned taking comping ideas from piano players and applying them to guitar. Could you talk a little bit about what the process of that was like and kind of the final result for you in your playing?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and I think I'll have to grab my guitar for this a little bit just to make that more, so that more guitar players can check it out, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But in general, I think for piano, the thing, especially with piano players, is that they have their left hand, which is allowing them to impose the harmony that they want to, and their right hand is kind of playing all the lines and stuff. And I was really interested in that because we only have this four fingers kind of doing the job,
Yeah.
And these four fingers are kind of have to act as our left hand and our right hand, and it's kind of hard to do that. So the way to kind of do that is firstly figure out pianistic voicings and stuff that you can use, that are easier on the guitar. So one of the first things that I went towards was fourths, and understanding fourth voicings. So that's like kind of, if you're in the key of C, and just going on the top three strings. And all of these notes, I can use them up and down an octave. So if I'm improvising in C, so I can go in and out of the key almost kind of like a pianistic way where I'm using those fourth voicings, but I'm still kind of playing in C. So it sounds
that's
kind
amazing.
of like it's a cool way. The other thing that piano players love using is these like a major 7 sharp 11 sound, a whole step below a dominant chord, which gives you basically that dominant 13 sound. So if you have an F7 chord, for example, let's take a simple F7 chord. People play E flat major with that, which is a cool sound. So in blues, you can use that. So the idea that not every chord needs to be from its root is very important. So for example, that C chord, if I'm playing a C blues, for example, it could be a B flat Lydian chord. That F7 can be like an E flat Lydian chord. So now if I'm playing in a blues and I comp chords that are not the root of those chords, it gives a lot of these cool sounds. I have all these
Yeah.
different things that I can comp around the chord, that give it cool sound. Another thing to learn is also, if you think of each triad, let's take the key of G, and you think of like just the triads going up, and you kind of imagine them as being numbers, three, and three. Um, well, this should be root, but since we're in the key of G, but we can but I'd like to think of them as number, because these are all like kind of small shapes that you can grab. You take one note and you take it down, so you can make it 3 3 2 in the key of G. So you get all these voicing that you can make. You can also go 3 2 3, which will give you all these weird sus voicings.
Yeah.
So all of these kind of are cool because they can all be used at a different root. This can be a nice A minor sound. This can be a nice A minor sus sound, or E minor sus sound. So you can use all of these kind of things. So piano players love being able to do that, and the idea of like, also, that when you're playing, try and comp at the same time is very important. And just shell voicings, imagining filling every space with shell voicings, even if I'm playing blues. Like
Yeah, man.
filling every space with kind of with some voicings that you can. So these are some cool things that you can learn from piano. I mean, there's a lot of exploration, and I kind of just like went over it in a sec, but yeah. So this is definitely one thing that, if you want to approach the guitar as a piano, is something that you can do. Another thing that I think is kind of cool is like taking your chords and dividing them into root, seventh, and fifth third. So if you have a minor chord, let's say A minor 7, you take that as root, seventh, fifth third, root, seventh. Now you have this entire flurry of notes. If you're playing any progression, let's say Autumn Leaves, you can do that. But the other part is like, you can also use them as like stride for your left hand. So you can go, you can use that as stride, and you can use that for like any song that you want to play.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like
such a powerful technique there.
Yeah, I mean, you can apply that on any tune that you want to try out, and that's not only can you use that as arpeggios. If you're trying to start playing a tune, You can also use it as like a stride thing where you have the chord melody kind of happening
Mhm.
at the same time while the chords are moving below you. So it's a cool thing to learn. Root 7 5th third. It's a stride kind of concept that you can apply on the guitar. So these are all the things that you can, I think, have kind of taken from piano players. Other than lines and language, there's a lot of language stuff that you can start looking at the guitar um, in every possible way. Most people kind of look at guitar this way, and you can kind of do that, but you can also kind of look at it this way. So you have this way of looking, which is more of a weird horizontal way of looking at the instrument. So that also means that you can kind of take an arpeggio. You have a major 7 arpeggio, and then that can be played this way, which can also be minor. It can be major 7 sharp 5. It can be all these different sounds that you want to do. So piano players can take one chunk of 4 or 5 notes and kind of apply them. So that's that. So if you have like something like a G7 chord, I can imply like a D flat major kind of sound, but pentatonic over it to get an altered sound. But when I'm doing that, I can use the same way to get kind of a full range of the instrument. So if I'm playing, get that full sound. If I have a D minor 7 flat 5, G7, so the looking at the guitar this way or that way is important, rather than just looking at it down.
Yeah.
Which is cool too, but you can go in a lot of different directions. So
You've had such an amazing collection of teachers throughout your time
Yeah.
studying. Do you feel like you can kind of point to things in your playing, like, oh, I took this from this person, I took this from this, or is it a little more of an amalgamation?
yeah, I think more than taking something specific from a player, it was more the fun part of like the lessons with them was, one, being in a room with them. That was already like pretty awesome. The second thing was like um playing with them made me realize instantly the things that I lacked at, without them even
Yeah.
telling me. Yeah, when you start playing duo with a saxophone player, you're like, oh wow, my time really sucks, or I lose my form, or something. I'm too in my head and stuff like that. So I mean, a lot of these players, I mean, there's especially Jerry Bergonzi. He's a very known saxophone player. He's also in one of my later records this year. But he's a scientist. I always would come in and I'd be like, "Hey Jerry, what can we play over these chord progressions?" And he'll give me like 44 different possibilities.
Right.
And then I'd just go crazy, write a full notebook of just like possibilities. And I remember just going home and just being like, let's try this chord and play it on this and this. And I would do that for hours, days on and on. So it was more of learning their concepts,
Yeah.
conceptual stuff that they were into. I could never really like figure them out as like their sound, because they're all such unique players that I could never
Of
copy
course.
it. Like
Mhm.
even when I tried that too. I would go home and I'd be like, wow, I recorded something that Miguel played, and I want to kind of try and play it, and I'd be like, even when I play it, it doesn't sound as convincing as it does when Miguel does it.
Mhm.
Or the same as like Jerry does it. I just don't sound like them. So even when I transcribe their licks or stuff, it's just such an integral part of what their identity is that I just can't seem to match that. But what was interesting was to learn these concepts that they provided me. I had a teacher, Ethan Iverson, who's a piano player, amazing piano player. And we did a lot of metronome exercises and insane metronome exercises. Some of the one I like struggled through getting through a lot of them, like having the metronome at like 30 BPM and imagining that's like 4 bars. Or like having the metronome only on upbeats or only on the one partial of a 16th note in a bar and then playing over a tune. It was a hard stuff.
Mhm.
And then Miguel, I was actually in his ensemble, so we played a lot of his tunes, and that was pretty challenging. That's some hard music to play. And I had Donnie McCaslin, Jerry Bergonzi, Jason Moran. All these guys taught me so many things, and their concepts, and they're just stuff from over there, years of learning that they
Yeah.
learned on the bandstand or something, and I'd be like, wow, this is cool insight. So
Yeah,
slowly
definitely.
after MI and Berklee and stuff, I feel like I started developing an identity. Right after MI, I was like, wow, I can play guitar really well, but that's it.
Mhm.
Is there anything more to this, or is this me? Is this all? Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think I think I mean to your point, I think there's so much value in, like you said, studying other instrumentalists or studying other kind of disciplines.
yeah,
I remember taking like a conducting class um, when I was in college, and that was like a totally different aspect of participating in music,
yeah.
than anything on guitar. So yeah, it's so interesting how it makes you think differently about things.
Yeah, I mean, at
Um,
Berklee, I remember we all have to do conducting, but I went to
mhm.
we have 2 levels of conducting that we have to do, and it's pretty intense. But I did conducting with live keyboard. So basically, you're in a room and you're reading the part on a keyboard and it's playing, and someone is conducting it. So you're a part of the ensemble.
Oh
It,
man.
it's a really interesting thing. So you also have to be looking at the person conducting you and then reading your part on a computer, on a keyboard. It's very interesting. Or you're on the other side where you're conducting and someone's reading some score. It was really cool. I really liked it. I think I conducted. I mean, I've conducted over the years. I've done many. I did a recent Brazilian string record where I wrote the string parts and conducted the string quartet, and I've conducted big bands and stuff quite a bit. But all this stuff, all these skills kind of came from Berklee, and it changes your
Mhm.
perspective as a player. When you start learning
Yeah,
all these
totally.
different things and learning about all these different instruments. Yeah, totally, man.
Yeah, awesome. So we talked a little bit about PSA, which is kind of your organ trio project.
Yeah,
I love organ trio. That's probably one of my favorite kind of configurations. And I think there's
yeah,
so many awesome, guitar examples or even non-guitar examples of organ.
totally.
What are you kind of going for with PSA in terms of, are there any kind of specific records that you feel like you're pulling from in terms of influences or
Yeah, I mean, I think quite a lot of people ask us about that, especially about our debut record that just came out. I think the record is like a combination of all our influences. I think the organ trio has kind of been the space of music where it's kind of traditionally only existed in one setting. There's like this guitar player playing swing tunes, the organ is taking over the bass and the harmony, and you have drums, and that's kind of like the vibe, and it's worked really well for years and generation. It's made this new thing, and I'm so inspired by that, and a lot of my favorite guitar players, especially like from Jimmy Smith time, and you have George Benson, and you have
yeah.
so many different, even the modern Francesco's world. You have all these different guitar players.
Yeah,
Frank McNeil
totally.
played,
Dan Wilson and
Dave Wilson. Yeah, I know
yeah.
Dave too, by the way. Yeah, and yeah, so many different players that and it's a really cool style of music. But I think when we were approaching this, we were like, we need to we were all kind of influenced by everything that organ is involved and can be involved in. So we have a song called Cliff Dunes, which is more of the traditional swing style. But then right after that, we have a song called Circle Around, which is more of a band like Kneebody would play. But now there's like organ and there's synth bass, you know. So
Mm.
instead of having the normal bass from our organ, we put like synth bass, but still the organ kind of being there. So, you know, and then we have like other songs. There's a song called Dogwood, which is more um, using the organ more in a neo soul way format. There's a song called Hymn that's kind of like a hymn in a church, you know, like so that's kind of like the gospel side of organ, you know. Yeah. So, and then we have other songs that are more like swing plus groove oriented songs. So it plus using synth bass and like other electronic stuff that we incorporated. So we were like, you know, we love the traditional organ trio sound, but there's so much more that you can add on top of organ trios, you know. Also like the organ itself, we can't have a B3 everywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
there are
right.
tunes that we were, yeah, you know, we were able to record on a B3 for most, but a lot of it we had to do on a Nord,
Mhm.
kind of their organ, the Nord organ thing that they have, and with the foot switches and stuff. And we can program the foot switches to have a different sounds instead of just having the traditional organ bass. We can have it have synth bass and stuff. So
Right.
you have all these different songs that you'll hear a lot of crazy stuff happening where you're hearing synth bass plus two hands on keys and stuff. So we kind of combine it all together. So it's like an organ trio. I try not to introduce it to people as organ trio because when you hear the word organ trio, they always go towards like, oh,
Yeah, right. It's kind of
the
one thing.
specific sound. But I always just go with PSA trio. And then you kind of decide where the organ sits in that. But
Yeah, that's really interesting. That kind of makes
yeah,
me think of like Pat Metheny's recent Side Eye
totally.
project, which is sort of the same kind of trio
Yeah.
thing. It's kind of cool how the keyboard can kind of become anything. I mean, like you're saying,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you have an entire orchestra there with you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool. So
That's kind of the,
we'd
yeah.
love to take a moment and preview, or I guess take a sneak peek at Cliff Dunes. So why don't we hear a little bit of that now? All right, so that was Cliff Dunes from PSA Trio. So I kind of had one more question I wanted to ask you. When you reflect on this awesome educational journey, I guess it's kind of a two-parter. Do you think there was one thing you could point to as being, kind of the key to your success throughout that? And then is there one thing you wish you had No, and I wish you had already learned it coming into all that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I still think about I wish I had like a prior training towards music, you know. Because I when I started my musical journey, I had to kind of put in the extra hours. I remember being at Musicians Institute and kind of falling asleep in the practice room and then waking 2 hours or an hour before my lesson and wanting to class, you know. And that was cool because I was really like invested and I was going really quick. And I remember like it's kind of crazy, but I remember that I would like just like my entire day would be like stay at school, get Chinese takeout, go to practice room, eat, keep practicing, fall asleep, wake up, show up to class, kind of repeat that till I like burn out, you know, and then I go back to my apartment. And it's weird. I was living right across MI, but I barely went to my apartment
Mm.
because I was always in school. Because I had to keep up with all these other guys who were like playing forever, you know. They showed up to MI, they were like, yeah, check out the stuff that I learned from Mike Stern, or check out this like record that I these solos. And I was like, I don't have any of this. I can play Thunderstruck kind of, you know. Yeah, I can, I can play a little bit of something, but I don't have. And then they'd be like, let's jam on a blues or like or standard or something, and I didn't have any of that repertoire in me.
Mm.
So I had to work double or triple the amount to kind of just to be on their level of just conversationally, just be in the same space. So I wish I had that in my life before, because I know some Indian musicians too that had parents that introduced them to jazz and kind of introduced them to an instrument, and they kind of took it. One of my best friends, a really good piano player, his parents introduced him to piano at like 2 or 3.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's awesome. you know
Right.
it's a very young age, but at that age you're just curious. You just want to like hit things, smash on a piano and just see whatever
Totally.
sound comes out, and then eventually you find interest. And then if you have family in your household playing some jazz records and stuff, and you're listening to that, you start growing interest towards it.
Mhm.
I didn't have that, so I had to kind of catch on to everyone's levels. I was like, people would be talking about Miles Quintet, and I was like, what is a Miles Quintet? I'll just go home and I'll be like, whoa, okay, this is what happened. Let's hear it. Let's hear everything. And I try and like digest all that information. And a lot of times I'll just be like, wait, what did I just hear? I'd go through like 4 records. I'd be in the middle of Bitches Brew or something, and I'd be like, what did I just hear? What is going
Yeah,
on?
right.
you know but but that's kind of my only regret, and that's something that I couldn't help, and my parents also couldn't have helped.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
um
I wonder though
but
if having to kind of work overtime to catch up, do you think that kind of set you up to have that kind of work ethic going forward once you had kind of even reached that
definitely,
level?
yeah, definitely. I think it also like made me serious about music education, teaching, and all that kind of stuff in general. I taught so many master classes, recorded for so many um lessons and stuff like that, and I still teach quite often, like almost every day. um so it's actually have a master class today in like a couple hours that I'm teaching, but on jazz guitar. So it made me really serious about education in music, because I knew that I started with having nothing on my hands, and I knew like what having education changed in my life, almost everything, to be honest, drastically. So I take that very seriously. So I think that gave me a new perspective in life for sure. It made me realize that, wow, this is valuable. The ability that you don't know something, and I can in 10 minutes give you some information, and now you know something new. Wow, that's kind of life changing, Or you didn't know the
Yeah.
sound existed, and in 5 minutes I can show it to you on paper and on the instrument, and you'll be like, wow, this is new. It's cool, and now I can add it to my playing. It's awesome. I
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
yeah.
And
Totally.
it's really kind of beautiful too. You talked about it a little bit with, studying with Berganzi and,
Yeah.
trying to cop their lines and stuff like that, and kind of realizing that you can't sound exactly like them. And so you'll kind of, inevitably you'll fail and sound like yourself instead, which is, I think that's kind of awesome. And it's kind of great too, because, I think it gives us, as educators, so much freedom to just share, because we know, yeah, of course, you're going to do your own thing with it. It's really awesome. We can, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's pretty life changing. But I feel like if I did have that education in the starting, I would have like maybe taken things for granted,
Yeah, totally.
you know.
That was kind of my thought as well. Yeah. I remember when I was at University of North Florida, we had Pasquale Grasso come in
Oh
and
yeah,
visit.
freaking Pasquale is great. Yeah.
He's awesome. And I remember he was telling us stories of like being a little kid, and his parents would put on like a Monk cassette or something, and he'd be like dancing to Monk. They like, him and his brother just loved Monk and bebop and all that kind of stuff. And I remember all the guys in the guitar department were like, "Oh man, why were we listening to Zeppelin and everything? We could have been listening to Monk and
But I
starting
mean,
that
to be
early,
honest, even listening to Zeppelin is hip, I didn't even have that going on. That's cool. If I had something, even the idea of like having music as a part of your culture life and stuff was just not existent for me,
Gotcha.
initially. And I wish that was something like that there, because in order for you to really succeed in wanting to get good in music, you need to become an active listener. And subconsciously, everyone that I met in America, no matter if they're a musician or not, they are all active listeners. They listen to lyrics, they can all describe something about music. But I wasn't at that space at all, because I wasn't listening to music actively in that shape at all. So I had to kind of teach myself how to be an active listener, and now I'm constantly that. Now I can't be a passive listener. Now I can't listen to anything and not try and dissect it out.
Yeah, right.
No matter whatever I hear on radio or whatever it is, I'm like, okay, this is what happened here, this is what happened there. Okay, cool. And if something's interesting, I go straight to the piano. I'm like, oh, this is what they're playing. Gotcha.
Yeah, it always kind of baffles me when people talk about studying to music, because I could never do that. At least as soon as I put totally distracted immediately.
No, I feel you. I'm at the same place.
Well, Pritesh, it's been so great having you join us here, and it's awesome to hear you doing that masterclass. We'd love to have you come by and do a masterclass on Fret Dojo. That'd be awesome.
That'd be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and I think we'll end there. So as always, this has been the Fret Dojo podcast. I've been Ryan, and thanks so much.
And for more jazz guitar lessons, tips, and free stuff, visit www.FretDojo.com.